Hi, you're listening to Book Chat with author Vivian E. Moore.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host.
Hello and welcome to Book Chat. I am your host, author Vivian E. Moore. I hope everyone had a great week and I hope that you're having an even better weekend. Okay, so we're going to get straight to today's show. The title is Don't Leave Me Hanging, and the topic is plot lines without a definitive ending. Alrighty, so there is nothing quite like the thrill of an engaging story until you reach the last page and you realize that's it. No closure, no explanations, just a lingering sense of confusion. Well, we know that's a no-go, right? But some stories, they leave readers with all sorts of questions to ponder, while others, they seem to just abandon their audience altogether. And we know that is not a good thing when that happens. So, while an open-ended conclusion can be a bold, artistic choice, but it can also frustrate and even alienate your readers when done poorly. Okay, so there is a right way and a wrong way to do everything. So what makes a plot without a definitive ending feel satisfying versus downright maddening? Okay, because we don't want to make anyone upset with us by doing that. So what we're going to do today is we're going to explore the fine line between intrigue and irritation, okay? So let's talk about the art of ambiguity. All right, so some stories, they intentionally leave room for interpretation, and we've seen that quite a bit, or we've read that quite a bit. And there are a few literary classics and psychological thrillers and even some sci-fi epics that often use open endings to provoke thought, right? So, these endings, they invite discussion, and it also allows readers to project their own conclusions onto the story if you're into that sort of thing. Now, I have read a book, or I have actually watched movies with family members that they narrate the whole time while you're watching the movie, saying that you should have done this and you should have done that, with the understanding they've never written a book or written a script a day in their lives, but they can actually tell the creator of that book or that movie what they should have done, all the things that they've done wrong. All right, so, everybody is a critic, right? And we like critics, but, we also like those critics that, that can critique and be fair in their criticization. All right, so but then, it will leave readers debating the real ending long after they've turned the final page. So that's why a lot of creators do that, right? So, but in those cases, the lack of a clear resolution, what it does is it enhances the story's themes and also the impact. But when an ambiguous ending feels unearned, it can leave those readers feeling cheated rather than challenged, okay? And we all get that part. So when open-ended becomes infuriating, so we're going to talk about that now. So the difference between a well-executed open ending and then one that feels unfinished, that often comes down to foreshadowing and then that thematic resolution. All right, because readers may feel like you tricked them. And, if a book builds tension around a central mystery or that conflict, but refuses to resolve it, then we know how infuriating that is, right? And then a few of the common culprits, this is what is included in that. Those abrupt stops, all right? The book ends mid-action or mid-dialogue, making it seem like the author ran out of pages, okay? And if you're being crafty authors, you may not want to do that, okay? And then, again, there is the lack of closure. Those key plots, those threads that remain dangling with no hints about their significance. I mean, where does that leave the reader? They want an ending. They deserve an ending. If they've invested all those hours reading your book, they deserve all those things that they anticipate coming in the end, okay? And then, of course, the bait and switch. Now, we're going to talk about that in a new episode, but we're going to hint about it today, those bait and switch endings. The story sets up a resolution only to deny the readers any payoff. And we don't want to do that. Let's not do that to our readers because it's not fair. Okay, they've made an investment in us, and so they deserve to have everything that investment entails. And, you know, many readers, they expect some level of satisfaction from an ending, right? And if the ambiguity feels forced or even lazy, what it does is it turns an otherwise great book into a frustrating experience. And we don't want to do that because, first of all, you never want to anger the reader by doing that. And then second of all, when the review comes around, yeah, you can almost guess it. It's not going to be nice. All right. So we don't want to do that to our readers. So, you know, let's talk about a few examples of those infamous hanging endings. And but these authors did it so well to where you really didn't mind it in the end, okay? Because they gave you everything you wanted throughout that story. And it left just a little bit of ambiguity at the end, but not enough to say, well, you know, I'm not satisfied with that. You know, what do I need to do to get that changed? Well, we want to talk about Gillian Flynn, and you may be familiar with her book, Gone Girl, right? You know, that psychological thriller that leaves the fate of his characters in a disturbingly unresolved state. Although we do get to the ending of the story and we see that I'm not going to give you the ending, okay? You need to read the book, or either you can watch the movie, okay? But I would suggest reading the book first and then watching the movie. All right. So, and then another one of my favorite authors is Cormac McCarthy. He wrote the book The Road, and it is one of those haunting post-apocalyptic novels that actually, you know, it left me with a sense of just a little bit of lingering uncertainty about the future. And I mean, now that is realistic because none of us know what the future holds, right? So I think Cormac McCarthy, and if you are familiar with him, then you know he wrote No Country for Old Men as well, and that is a great book, and you might want to read that. There's also a movie with that same title that you might want to check out, but I would suggest reading the book first. But if you read the book, you know, that ending, it is sort of satisfying, although it still leaves you with a lot of what ifs and you know, about the future of these characters that are in that story. But, you know, unless he comes out with a different one, a second book. I don't know if he did or not. I know I read the first one, The Road, so I don't know if there's a sequel to that or not, but you can check it out on your own if you want to. But anyway, and the third one that I want to talk about is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. Now, this one is one of those surreal sci-fi novels that refuses to explain many of its mysteries, and it also leaves readers questioning what was real. But, you know, still it has that flair about it, that creative touch to it, that, you know, when you have those hanging endings that are done well, it does not leave you unsatisfied, but it still leaves you asking what if, but you sort of feel good with the ending, even though it didn't end the way you thought it would. Okay. So, you know, and again, while these endings work for some, you know, others may still find it frustrating that, that it didn't end the way they wanted to. But the key is whether the unanswered questions feel meaningful or it seems like that there's just some pages missing. Okay, so let's go to the reader's verdict, shall we? So, at the end of the day, whether an ambiguous ending is satisfying, it depends on those personal preferences. And some readers enjoy pondering different possibilities, while others crave those clear-cut conclusions. And if a book leaves too much unresolved, what it does is it risks feeling incomplete rather than thought-provoking. Okay, so we don't ever want to do that to our readers. We want to make sure that they are fulfilled in every sense of the word. So we want to give them our best on each and every turn of the story, unless you're just one of those writers that you get a kick out of leaving those open endings because you want the reader to actually use their own thought process and come to their own conclusions about how the story should end. Okay, but I think that if you're going to do that, then you need to have a line in there that says, you be the judge, or something to that effect, to let the readers know that this is all you're going to get unless you come up with your own defining ending. And again, that's not fair to the readers unless, it's done in a way to where they can be satisfied with the ending, even if it wasn't the one that they, fully expected, but still is something that they can work with, that they feel, okay, I can deal with that. I accept that, even though it didn't end the way I wanted it to, still I can accept the way it ended. So, it's a toss up. You may have some readers again that are into that type of thing, and then others that, they always want to know how it ends. They always want to know how it ends. They don't want anything left open to suggestion or anything like that. They want you to be direct with them and just tell them, okay, just tell me what's the ending. All right. And that's fair, right? That is very fair. But still, we still want to just, touch bases again over those plot lines without a definitive ending. We want to master the art of ambiguity, right? And we also want to recognize that when we write stories with those open-ended endings, that it does not infuriate the reader, because we never want to do that. Why, folks? Because we want the reader to keep buying our books, all right? And we also want to make sure that we do not have those abrupt stops. We don't have a lack of closure, and then we don't have those bait and switch endings. And I can't wait to do that episode with you. I hope that you will enjoy it when that happens. All right. So, and again, I have a couple of two or three of my favorite authors on here, and that's Gillian Flynn, Cormac McCarthy, and then Jeff Vandermeer. And Cormac McCarthy has written quite a few books. He does some Westerns as well, but again, I would suggest you checking out his complete library of books, because I thoroughly enjoy his writing and his stories. Okay. And, so the next time you find yourself screaming, don't leave me hanging at a book's final page, you just need to ask yourself, was the ambiguity intentional, or did the story simply refuse to give you the closure you deserve? All right. So, and if you have read any books that left you scratching your head, let's discuss that in the comments, shall we? All right. So, guys, that is the show for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you will listen, like, and share, and follow me across all social media. And always remember to tell those who you care about the most how you feel about them today, because tomorrow is not promised, and today might be the only chance you get to say it. So on that note, I love you. I hope you love me back. Until the next time you hear my voice, God bless you, and goodbye.
Loved what you've heard on this week's episode? Well, the answer is simple. It would mean the world to us if you could head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review and feedback. Spreading the word really is the best way to grow our podcast and achieve even greater things. Thank you.